Thank you for joining the 2024 Virtual ASNNA Conference. Today, we will hear 8 presentations in the areas of program delivery and communications. Each presentation will last for around 10 minutes, and presenters will have about 5 minutes for questions and answers. Please use the Q&A function for questions and answers that will be answered live. All sessions will be recorded and eventually posted on the ASNNA platform once we're able to confirm the transcriptions. We will not be sending out CEU options for the virtual conference. The agenda for today includes a brief overview of ASNNA, followed by Block 1 presentations, which are focused on program delivery. A 30-minute lunch/physical activity break after. And lastly, we'll finish up the virtual conference today with Block 2 focused on communications. Now I will turn it over to ASNNA leadership team, who will give us a brief overview of ASNNA.
Hello, everyone. This is Hyunjun Kim. I am also a ASNA co-chair of LT. Seems like Heidi is having some technical issues joining, so I will go ahead. Don, do you have any other slides other than this beautiful picture? Yes. Okay. So ASNA is a professional organization that promises to create changes in SNAP nutrition education administrators dedicated to improving the nutrition status of SNAP recipients and those eligible for SNAP Ed, our communities. Mm, yep. And we have, oh, okay. Okay, Heidi's here and she prepared the presentation, so I will turn it over to Heidi. Seems like she needs a panelist or co-host access. Could you give her the access? Okay, in the meantime, I can announce several things that I can actually I prepared. So I will let Heidi present the slides, but I have another announcement. So it's about a ASNA leadership team election this year. Finally, we have the completed voting memberships. So we will start the voting today. During or right after this conference, we will send an email to every voting member, which has a individualized email link. So when you have that email, then you can enter to a Qualtrics survey, and you can vote for this year's leadership team members. We have 4 really wonderful candidates, and we will elect 3 LT members this year. So I will send you the link soon, and you will receive the link right after this conference. So please join the election. Okay.
Dawn, did you see? I think Heidi is under Kristen. So if we could give Kristen.
Yes, I'm
There we
so
go.
sorry. I did not know that I was under someone else. So
Thank you. Kristen's my program coordinator, so I must have just clicked on hers instead of my own. Thank you, and I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to start off by saying how excited I am to be part of ASNNA and to be part of the SNAP-Ed program. This work is an incredible opportunity for us. As we make changes to people's lives every day. I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I feel that you all are as well, that each of us are here for a reason, and that reason is to help change families and individuals.
Recording in progress.
Um, I believe that we can figure out anything. And today we're going to learn what other states are doing and what opportunities we have to look at our programs and improve our programming. I think it's an exciting time to be part again of SNAP-Ed. We have a lot of changes that have happened, and I've been around for a little while, for about 20 years in the SNAP-Ed administration world in our state of Utah. And over that time, we've had significant changes. One of the things that I absolutely love, and this slide shows some of the things that we do and how we change the world, but we have these opportunities to be progressive in the approaches that we do, and I'm excited that we'll learn more about that today as well. SNAP-Ed is able to focus on local needs, and we are able to cater our programs to meet the needs of our participants. I also wanted to thank the conference planning committee for not only the in-person conference, but also for this virtual conference. This conference that we're in today has so many new people coming to our conference. They can be on the ground grassroots efforts, and then state people, implementing agencies, our national nutrition education branch. It's a comprehensive group of people that are here today, and that's exciting. All right, will you go to the next slide, please? So the next thing that I wanted to do was just kind of give you an update of what's happening and some exciting things that we have going on. So Hanjun, or the leadership team, will be sending out an email that will have a few virtual cards in it that you can, and we're asking you please go in and sign. Those cards are for outgoing leadership team members. The outgoing leadership team members are Sarah Pinkin. She served and came back when we had big transitions with our leadership team. And then Teresa Jackson, she has been serving and carrying a heavy load, and she's also moved off of the leadership team. And then Lacey has served her term as well. So we want to thank them, and again, we hope that you will go in and just say a little note of your appreciation to them. The next thing I wanted to mention was that we have voting for new leadership team members will begin today. That'll also come across from an email, and you can go in and vote for our new leadership team members. We hope to have them in place in a couple of weeks. I think we have to keep the vote open for 8 days. So we should be able to have new members helping us. We also are asking that if you are interested at all in serving at a national level, we have working groups, and they're listed here on this slide. We have these groups that we would love to have ASNNA members be part of, and to help influence the direction and the work that's happening nationally. We need you, so we're asking you to really consider serving in this capacity. These working groups, depending on which one you're on, will take more time than others, but all of them are very important in the work that we do. So please sign up. The next comment I wanted to bring is that there's rumors that the guidance will be out late April. So we're looking forward to that. And then also the SNAP-Ed intervention submission form and scoring tool is out on the Federal Registry right now, and all comments have to be submitted before April 2nd to be considered. And so now's the time to share those, share your information. I believe the evaluation group is actually working on a comment from ASNNA together as a collective, but you're welcome to write your own comments if you like them, if you appreciate how it's been going. All of those things are really helpful to let ASNNA know, let NEB know. The other thing that I think is exciting, we just had some updates from NEB, and they told us that the SNAP-Ed toolkits and that are evidence-based materials are on the SNAP-Ed Connection website. In fact, that is where we can go to find all of the resources that we need for SNAP-Ed from NEB. They have historical resources, they have reports from states. It's a great place for us to go find information. It's their clearinghouse of information. Another piece I wanted to mention was that we were able to do some listening sessions with FDA. I hope I got them right. But they were looking at what the front of packaging labels look like, and to get some information specifically of how front of product labels affect our SNAP recipients and participants. And so really great discussions. And so thank you for those of you who volunteered to be part of that focus group. There were a couple of the focus groups, but thank you. The insight was very important and very insightful. I also wanted to mention that the conference slides for in-person and virtual will be up on the website on March 22nd. And then FNS has just actually replaced, I believe it was, now I'm losing my mind, I'm sorry. Replaced, oh my gosh, I'm sorry that I can't remember her name, and she's amazing. She's been around for a long time. I just spaced it, but
Doris?
yes, Doris, thank you. Replaced Doris and with Brenda Wolford, and she has lots of SNAP-Ed experience. She was in as a state implementing agency in California. She's also provided years of insight and information for evaluation with Altruum. And so we're excited to have her. All right, go ahead and go to my next slide. And the next slide is just a slide that gives you where to look for more information and who to email if you need to. So thank you so much. I'm sorry I had some technical difficulties. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this conference, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you very much, Heidi, for that overview of ASNNA. If you are interested in being a part of any of the committees that Heidi talked about, feel free to enter your information into the Q&A, and we will be able to connect you with the leadership of each one of those committees. So now we will move on to block 1, which is focused on program delivery. Our first presentation will be given by Justine Hoover, A Journey of SNAP-Ed in Rural Iowa Communities. Justine has pre-recorded her presentation, but she is here live and will be available for questions after the presentation.
Today I'd like to take you on a quick journey of SNAP in some rural communities. We're going to take several stops on this journey. The first stop is the past programming that we did in rural communities, and this occurred from 2010 to 2017. This programming trained parenting educators assistant teachers to couple nutrition education with their parenting. We experienced sometimes these on the existing parenting programming and working with the educators who are already well established in these rural communities. The lows were that we had a narrow audience. The rural Iowa population is aging, so accessing many people was a challenge through this program. So ultimately, due to the which we had to discontinue this. 2018 was a little bit of a gap year for us. So in 2019, our second study, which was conducting a needs assessment in partnership with the Iowa Department.
Hey, I guess there's some difficulties with the sound. Justine, if you would like to do live, you can.
I can certainly give it a go, as long as everybody in my house promises to be quiet. So it's spring break here. My kiddos are home. It's a little bit wild, but I can sure give it a go. Do you have my slides available, or would you like me to share my screen? I have my slides here.
If you could share your screen, that would be great.
Yes, I sure can.
Stop sharing.
Let me get it in presenter mode here. All right, so here we go. I'm so sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. I was trying to be clever and protect you all from my children, but we'll do the best we can. So just briefly, what we kind of missed on the first couple slides is that we had rural programming in Iowa from 2010 to 2017, and we did that in conjunction with parenting education. We had trained parenting educators to couple nutrition education with their parenting classes. And what went really well with that was that it built off existing parenting programming. But the negative of that is that in Iowa, in our rural communities, as I'm sure many of you have experienced as well, is that our rural communities are aging. And so there was a very narrow audience and a limited reach with this programming. So eventually we did have to discontinue it. And so, oh, you aren't seeing it's not advancing. I'm so sorry. Let's try again. Let's get the technical difficulties worked out with this first one so that we don't have to worry about it for future ones. So in 2019, we did a SNAP-Ed needs assessment in partnership with Iowa Department of Public Health. And no surprise there, we found that rural counties in Iowa had little to no SNAP-Ed programming because we had discontinued our rural programming. And so we knew that we needed to do something about that. In 2020, I'm sure, we all had a lot of questions, and not just related to SNAP-Ed programming, and not just related to rural realities. But we did ask ourselves a lot of questions. It was really kind of, we treated it as a thinking year for our rural Iowa programming. How could we figure out using the guidelines and the guidance if we had qualifying sites in our rural counties? What was the capacity of the staff who are working in our rural counties? Was there even a need or a perceived need for nutrition education or food programming? And what were the logistics of getting that done? So in 2021, we decided to conduct a formative evaluation. And one part of that formative evaluation was interviews with ISU Extension and Outreach County staff who would be people who could be potentially partnering with us in delivering this rural Iowa programming. And that formative evaluation brought us 3 themes. The first of which is that there was a high need for food and nutrition programming identified by Extension and Outreach staff in rural Iowa counties. One person said, "I think there is a lot of increased interest in food security and food access, particularly around produce." So we found out that there was actually a need. That question was answered. The second theme really revolved around the fact that people who were administrators in programs, people like me in SNAP-Ed, in our system are viewed as campus staff. We're campus, and that we really needed to do a better job of training people who were seen as county to deliver programs locally. And so one person had said, I think it's helpful to hear from specialists, but hearing from other counties and getting to bounce ideas is always helpful. So there was this real desire we noticed for peer-to-peer communication and also peer-to-peer training for the future of our programming. And then another person said, and this came out with multiple interviews, that there was really a desire for a timeline or benchmarks with the program. So toward the end of that longer quote, the person said, what you can do in your first month, this is where we would want you to be in 6 months. This is what a year out should look like. So they have context of the evolution of the project. So we tried to take both of those major pieces of feedback into consideration in planning our rural Iowa programming. And then the third one really came out, elements of county campus partnerships. And this was both what can be a healthy partnership and what has been an unhealthy partnership in the past. So what can we work toward and what can we avoid, or what damage can we repair? And so this person offered to build strong relationships through communication and flexibility, to be respectful, and to know that it's a mutually fulfilling relationship. So we took that advice to heart as we began planning for our rural Iowa programming. From 2021 to 2023, we developed what we called the SNAP-Ed County-Led Delivery Program. And we partnered with 8 counties, county staff in 8 counties, to pair direct nutrition education classes with PSE work with local food pantries. And so we did that for about 18 months. It brought us from the programming started January of 2020. The training was in November of 2021. The programming kind of kicked off January 2022. And then we looked at the program for the first 18 months. So that would be June, end of June. So the state fiscal year of 2023. And during that time, we conducted a mixed methods process evaluation. So the quantitative part of that was really tracking program participation and partnership building during those 18 months, and then also gathering feedback and recommendations from the ISU Extension Outreach staff who were implementing the program, then also from direct nutrition education class members and the food pantry partners. Now, I wish I had time to share all the wonderful feedback that we got, but I really want to focus on the qualitative portion today and some of the themes that came out. So first, support was a huge one. And really, we were glad that this came out because this was direct from what we learned in that formative evaluation. So that communication piece, taking time to check in, send emails, meet with staff, see how things are going, and offer support. But then also that peer-to-peer support that we were able to develop and create through this program. So just being able to talk with other people who are doing similar things to me is really nice. The next kind of theme that came out of this feedback was relationships and community connections. And so our extension educators really found that they were able to successfully implement this program when they built off existing connections and relationships that were already present in their communities or through their extension other programming that they're doing. So this person said, working with our food pantry, our ministerial alliance, and working with the schools. But then also something that came out over and over again was really something that the people we talked to felt was specifically related to living and working in rural communities, that there were groups of people, community members, who wanted to help and support other community members. And so they were able to identify those groups of people and work with those people to implement this programming. A major challenge that came out from both our food pantry feedback and also our staff feedback was their capacity. So, our staff really felt that capacity to implement this type of programming really was a challenge for them. So this person said, besides doing this program, I need a good balance between all the other stuff that I do for my job and then trying to tack this on as well. I personally, truthfully, haven't been able to find a good balance. There was a lot of turnover, both at the partner agencies that we were working with and the food pantries we were partnering with, but also within extension and outreach. Those county staff positions are hard to keep long term. And so we experienced some turnover during that time as well. After talking to each person, I always asked them what their recommendations were for the future of this programming. And these are some of the top recommendations. So being aware of staff capacity and the time investment that it takes to build and maintain the relationships necessary to do SNAP-Ed work all over Iowa, but especially in these rural communities. To either continue or enhance the system of support that we created in this program, to involve more county staff in program planning. This was a common theme also, provide additional food and nutrition class topics. So people wanted more, they wanted more to learn more. And there was a desire for more nutrition information in the rural communities. Using different marketing strategies. And this specifically came from some of the class members that I was talking to, and they really felt that they were kind of disappointed that class attendance wasn't what they had hoped it would be. And so they were offering us some marketing strategies. And then the food pantry volunteers and staff we talked to really thought it would be great if we could expand this program. So that was nice to hear as well. Then, now we just have to decide, now we're in 2024, what is the future of this program? Where do we go next steps? The 8 counties that we are partnering with, some of them are continuing to do this work. Some of them have chosen not to continue. The main reason choosing not to continue is because the staff have left their positions. And so there's no longer anyone there to do this work anymore. We can support local staff in identifying those partnership opportunities. If new counties come on board, we can do better at establishing what the time expectations are for this, especially now that we know better after now 2 years of doing this. We know what the time expectations are better than we did back in November of 2021. We can do a better job of building awareness of PSE work, especially in our rural communities and within Extension as a whole. We can also continue to collect feedback. And we did learn that we can probably do a better job of collecting feedback from our direct nutrition education participants. The methods that we have traditionally relied on did not work as well this time around. So we need to do a better job with that as well. And so I believe I've taken more than enough of your time and my time today. So, if you want to continue this conversation about rural programming, I know I would love to. And so that is my email address, and feel free to reach out. And thank you all for your time and dealing with my technical difficulties today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Justine. We do have time, of course, for any questions that anyone might have. So if you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A function at the very bottom of your Zoom screen, and Justine can answer that live. Or if you want it answered later, she can also type in the response while we move on to the next presentation. Seeing no questions, we will go ahead and, well, we might have one here. We do have one question. What are some of the marketing strategies the participants shared?
Yeah, so actually, using social media was one that came up pretty frequently. They felt that their local extension as a whole could use social media better to advertise the local programming. They felt that maybe their local extension just wasn't well known and that social media would be a great one. And then also offering the same program at different times of day was also a big one. They felt that the program time of day was right for them, but they saw that there was issues within their community where it wouldn't be right for everyone. There was they offered different places to advertise within their community, so a lot of it was really specific, community specific, and so that was feedback that we could pass on to the local implementers and help them. And I see Judy, thank you so much for being here today. Judy, who responded, has been a key member of making this program get off the ground and continue on, so thank you, Judy, for being here too.
You have one additional question, Justine. What time expectations did you find to be the most effective?
Yeah, so the big thing that we have decided going forward is that we need to do a better job of establishing those time expectations with the supervisor of the county educator or the county staff member, because the county staff members were expressing to us that they felt that they were given expectations from their supervisor which were not realistic to complete both the SNAP-Ed programming that we had made available to them, but also all the other things that their supervisors were asking them to do. And so in Iowa, we have our extension is structured with we have regional directors, and they are sometimes the supervisors of the local educators, sometimes they're not. So it can get a little bit those expectations can get muddied through the channel of communication. And so that's really going to be our number one step going forward, is making sure that that's really clear with the supervisors and not just the staff who are going to be delivering the program.
Thank you so much, Justine. If anybody else has questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A function and we can answer those. But we are going to move on to our next presenter. Our next presentation is Fresh Start to a Healthier You. We have a couple different presenters, but Lindsay Brunig Rodriguez will be sharing the majority of today's presentation. So Lindsay, go ahead.
All right, good morning. If we wanted to go ahead and advance to our main slide, as mentioned, my name is Lindsay Brunig Rodriguez. I am a project manager for the Better Living for Texans program, which I will further abbreviate to BLT. And we're not talking about the sandwich, we are talking about the program. We do have several other presenters that helped in contributing to our presentation. However, today I'll be our main speaker, and just to highlight those that were part of that, Priscilla Forey, our state project specialist, you'll be hearing from her in the next presentation, and then also our program director, Renda Nelson. And so just a little bit about the BLT program. Started in SNAP-Ed, started being part of SNAP-Ed in 1995, and we are part of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, which is one of the land-grant universities in Texas, and one of the many SNAP-Ed implementing agencies in Texas as well. And so We are primarily focused in direct education in our areas similar to SNAP-Ed in general, with focus areas of nutrition, physical activity, and gardening. Our reach is across the state of Texas. Texas, as many of y'all know, is a big state. We have 254 counties, and the BLT program has had programming in about 210 of those. Depending on how some counties are set up, you might have extension agents that cover 2 counties, or the kind of even in some spans over 3 different counties. And so across Texas, we have a large and diverse SNAP-Ed population, which Priscilla is going to talk about in the next presentation. And it is through the efforts of our local county extension agents and educators that we can support not only the mission of extension, but also then the mission of the Better Land Protections program to empower individuals, families, and communities to make positive changes for healthier lives. So that's just a little overview of the BLT program. But today I'm going to focus on the Fresh Start to Healthier You, which is one of our adult nutrition programs. It's a 4-session series designed to teach participants about making healthier choices and increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, increasing physical activity, and improving food resource management and food safety practices as well. So we can go ahead and jump to the next slide. A little just overview of the Fresh Start to Healthier You program. We launched this program in 2016, and it's designed to be a holistic adult learning series that uses the participant experience to help change lives and improve health through that peer-to-peer conversation, through that participant experience. And so participants gain support and understanding through the educator, of course, but it's really through those participants and how the curriculum has been constructed to have a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue amongst participants, where those conversations can occur and for that learning material to take place. And so topics are centered around these 4 main objectives of providing safe and working to promote our fight back food safety principles, working to increase our fruit and vegetable consumption, and also looking for ways to improve the ability to cook nutritious meals through cooking skills, conversations that also then lead to best food resource management practices to reduce the amount of money that are spent on groceries. And so, not only for just that participant, but then also for the family themselves. And so over the 4 sessions, we integrate these conversations. Each session will then kind of have its theme, but a lot of these topics build upon each other. Where when we're doing a food demonstration, we're still talking about food safety, whether it's the first lesson or on to the 4th lesson as well. On average, the sessions last between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the time that the site will allow. So this comes down to the partnerships that agents and educators have. If the facility can be conducive to a food demonstration, or is it a facility where you might be having to bring the food already pre-prepared in sample cups and whatnot. So the participants are able to choose recipes and able to choose recipes that they can, be a part and choose recipes that then they can be a part of during that hands-on that cooking segment. In some cases, if that is not, if depending on the class size, maybe more of a cooking demonstration is deemed appropriate, or as mentioned, you might be doing those taste test samples. And so recipes are going to highlight, our fruits and increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, but then also, really getting to debunk maybe myths of only shopping in a certain part of the grocery store, and instead now using the whole grocery store to your benefit by looking at the fresh, the canned, and the frozen options, and then talking about different seasons in Texas. We have, as I mentioned, it's a large state. Depending on where you live, depending on what might be most accessible depending on where you live. And so at each session, in terms of like materials that participants are provided or incorporate into the materials, they receive a session booklet that has all the handouts that have been curated for that session that they can have in a booklet form. We have some pocket guides, and then also recipe cards that are in support of the recipe that has been chosen for that session. And then for our evaluation, we do a pre-post and then a 30-day follow-up survey. And often agents, I mean, just in our kind of best practices that we have heard from our agents, they might go ahead and already have it scheduled. Like this is a 5-session series, that then that 5th session is that 30-day, and they might bring in another topic that participants want to learn more about. So if they want to dive in deeper to the nutrition facts label, we have several, we call them single education sessions, where then they could provide that content and then also go to gather that 30-day follow-up survey. Several years ago, we were solely doing paper surveys, but we have recently, through the work with our Office of Data and Accountability, we've been able to offer those surveys digitally so that participants can take the survey on their phone. They can be sent the survey if they had an email address for that. And so we are able to kind of adapt for that site and also what those participants might need. And so if we can go ahead, we can move on to that next slide. So the Fresh Start to Healthier You, as I mentioned, it is a dialogue-centered approach learning style, and it was designed using the 4A model, which is which the 4A model has been used by several SNAP Ed and FNEP curriculums. It's, piece and kind of is based into the Cornell formation from even Navigating for Success or other curriculums as mentioned. And so, but I know that the model might not be familiar to everyone. And so using, the Zoom chat box feature, if you want to take just like 10 seconds to let me know if you have heard of the 4A model in SNAP interventions, or if this is a completely new model that I'm going to talk about. So just get a little gauge of your familiarness with it. Let's see. I have not. There we go. Great. So good. I'm glad to hear this is potentially something new for those listening. So if we can go ahead, we can go on to the next slide to talk a little bit more about the 4A model. So the 4A model is the 4 A's. They stand for anchor, add, apply, and away. And a fresh start to healthier you. As mentioned, it's based in this, and the idea is we want to create an atmosphere where learners are actively engaged in the learning process and not just passive listeners. Similar to going to a class lecture where that professor would be up there talking and the students are just receiving the knowledge. We really want and encourage educators and how the curriculum is written. We want to move away from that and instead encourage those conversations. And so the 4A model guides meaningful learning experiences that build on knowledge and the skills. And so when we start with the anchor, that's how the class begins. And it's an activity that anchors the topic for the participants, and it anchors it to their life and introduces it by building on previous experiences and knowledge. It helps the learner transition to what they already know and potentially opening up the thought for maybe some new information. And so that activity might be done by pairing up with small groups or pairing up with a partner, and maybe being asked like kind of like an icebreaker warm-up question that's based in that topic. And so in our session 1 conversation, our session 1 is about food safety. And so we will have participants maybe share a personal experience if they feel comfortable, if sharing an experience maybe about themselves or a family member who experienced, a foodborne illness. And sometimes it's that gross story that then kind of triggers that thought for others to, oh, this is important. I need to listen. That stat of, 1 in 6 having a foodborne illness it becomes more real when it's someone sitting next to you in the classroom who has had that or has had a family member experience febrile illness. So that's how we anchor. We start the class with that question. For example, then also in session 3, we do session 3 is more focused on meal planning and my plate information. And so we will introduce that session by having people share their meal planning tips and their meal planning hacks that they can implement at home, or that they implement at home, or that other participants can also go home and implement as well. And more often than not, the points that folks are sharing are the points that the educator has to reference. And so that educator then might be able to add in, which leads into our second A, add in information that has not already been mentioned, or then adding in some expanded information. So, you know, it's that time to then convey and help participants understand maybe that topic a little bit deeper, or then take some steps needed to add in, like I mentioned, add in extra pieces of knowledge. Maybe it's, you know, a meal planning hack, or something then with, you know, the My Plate food groups, where it can be that mini lecture, but we really don't want we don't want it to be a lecture. We don't want it to be when the agent all of a sudden just turns on the talking and they're the only ones talking for the rest of the class. And so this might also include, like, you know, looking at the handout, looking at a story, or maybe using a slide or two if needed. And so in that session 2, for one example that I wanted to highlight, you know, that's where we start to talk about the My Plate food groups in session 2. And so this might be where that participants, they've shared their favorite foods, and then that educator can start pulling from those favorite foods and use the My Plate model to show, like, how you can make a balanced meal with the favorite foods or your favorite cultural foods that the participants had shared. So then we go to apply, where then this is where we are applying the information, and the participants typically then do this in a hands-on activity, or maybe something that's with among smaller groups. This is where our food demonstrations come into play. Educators are going to use those lesson objectives and then build those into their talking points for the food that they're making. We know there's 1,000 things that we could talk about with one recipe, but with, you know, there's 1,000 things that we could talk about, but we want to make sure that the points that we're not opening the water or the fire hydrant to a bunch of information, and so having it become overwhelming. And so using those lesson points and those objectives into those talking points, you know, then maybe for example, in session 3, that's our food resource management session. That's where we just talk, you know, that the educator might really focus in on name brand versus store brand. If we're doing a recipe, like we have a skillet pasta dinner where there's a lot of frozen vegetables involved, that's a great way to then talk about the cost of the differences between that name brand and that store brand. And then lastly, with the away, this is where participants can take it into the real life setting. This is where we offer in some more conversation about, like, what you can do with this information, or what you want to do or will do with that information. And often this is maybe a moment of reflection that you can do with a partner, or then kind of share out with a group. And so that's kind of like our quick speed version of the 4A model. Like I mentioned, the anchor, add, apply, and away. And so if we can go to that next slide, we will dive into a couple more pieces with the Fresh Start implementation. Like I mentioned, it's a statewide program that our agents and educators and volunteers also do. We consider this curriculum one of our base and great introduction curriculums for not only the agents and educators, but also if they have volunteers. We have a master wellness volunteer program where this is a how it's written out. Like I mentioned, this dialogue approach. We encourage our volunteers to become familiar with this curriculum first. And so agents and educators, they'll partner with schools, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits to deliver Fresh Start to our SNAP-Ed participants. And, you know, additionally with that digital evaluation tool we have now, we also are able to produce like real-time reports so that agents can use that to use that as not only a promotional measure for working with partners, but also for a way to turn around with that partner and say, hey, here's the impact that happened at our level. Often, they might get a whole county, or we might have our state, our fiscal year report, but we're able to pull and kind of have that micro examination of how that program was in that partnership in the county. And so speaking of impacts, if you want to go to our last slide, as mentioned, this program has been implemented since 2016, but I wanted just to kind of highlight our FY23 impacts. We're in the process of doing a deeper dive. However, here's just some kind of general numbers from FY23. We had around 3,000 participants in about 2,000 pre and post surveys. Pre and post are our strongest. Our 30-day follow-up is not to that 2,000 point, but we did have those 2,000 pre and post surveys. We had about 300 series across 65 counties. As mentioned, this is one of our direct education curriculums, and so we have a presence in around 210 counties, but not all counties will do this curriculum, as they have kind of a menu of options. So about 65 counties were present and delivering a fresh start to healthier you. And our most common, when I was looking through our most common sites that we're familiar with for pairs, our most common sites that were reported were community and recreation centers, group living arrangements / kind of like those residential treatment centers, individual homes or public housing sites, and then schools. Often our participants their partnership with a school is multi-layered, and that they might have a youth curriculum going on, but then they might be doing lunch and learns with parents where they would be a fresh start to healthier. You would be a great curriculum to add in during those lunch and learns or during those after hours times. A couple other pieces, thinking back to our 4 principles that were kind of highlighted for food safety. About 88% of participants after the program were washing fruits and vegetables before they were eating. About half, there's always room for improvement, but about half of participants were filling at least half their plates with fruits and vegetables, kind of following that My Plate guideline after our program. And then in terms of using the My Plate model, about 80% of participants were using that to guide decisions when meal planning. And then last but not least, when using in food resource management, about 63% of participants were often or always comparing the unit prices when buying food. And so those are just some of our program impacts. As I mentioned, we're going into a deeper dive currently to really see if there's what other things we can glean from our years of implementation. And if we go to our next slide, that is it. That is a fresh start to healthier you. And here's are some ways to reach us. We're on social medias and whatnot. So thank you so much for having me today. I guess now some questions, if there are any.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. We do have one question, but I'm going to ask if you can please respond to it in the Q&A, just so that we can keep on track with the other presenters in our timeline. And if other questions come up, please enter those into the Q&A as well. We are now going to move on to our next presentation, which is coming from Priscilla, Strengths and Challenges Between Urban and Rural Programming.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yes, so today we'll be focusing on some of those differences and some of those solutions for our urban and rural programming. And I'd also like to acknowledge Lindsay Brunig Rodriguez and Brenda Nelson, as they were also instrumental in helping with this presentation as well. We can move to the next one. So as mentioned, yes, Texas is very big. And one thing that has been noticed is there is a differentiation between urban and larger population, because we may have some that are classified as urban populations, but we also have populations that are maybe larger and not necessarily rural. And even the definition for what is rural and urban is a little fluid. As I researched, there was about 15 different definitions for what could be urban, what could be rural. So today we're going to focus on classifications based on Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. So in AgriLife Extension, they have classified seven counties as urban, but of course it is not to say out of the 254 that only 7 are larger populations. Therefore, when I talk about the urban populations, I'm also going to be grouping in with that the larger populations, because we know that they do have similar experiences, they may have similar challenges, and their solutions may be very similar as well. And then I'll focus on the rural, and then I'll move on to that side as well. Okay, so for our rural counties, I'm going to talk a little bit about population size, partners and stakeholders, how they market, and then program implementation. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind when we think about a rural community is there's probably not that many people as there would be in, say, a larger county. And so it's really important to consider that because of that, there's going to probably be less SNAP Ed eligible people to be able to have programs with. And so the agents and educators really spend time focusing on community events and different programs that go on that people are basically going to be present at, because that's their way to get the buy-in of the community, to understand what it is that's important to them and what types of places and activities that they're interested in. That way it's easier for them to make that connection with the population. And when we think about partnerships and stakeholders, one thing that is very unique in a lot of these rural counties is that the local government is basically the crux. It's really where that connection matters most. And so a lot of our agents and educators will physically visit with local government, make their presence known, bring resources and tools that we would use in the settings that we're going into, so that we can have that buy-in at the base level, so that it's easier to make those connections throughout the community. Because the goal is really for us to be able to understand the community culture, especially in smaller communities. That community culture is going to be kind of the baseline for how people operate in that specific setting. And so we really work to establish professional relationships at the beginning before we even start to market any programs. And then also having that opportunity, if there are other organizations in those communities, making sure that we're partnering with them so that we can enhance program efforts and really maximize on the space and the population that's there. And so when we think about marketing, the good thing is, because could be good and bad, in some situations, the rural counties may be small knit, so you can get from place to place easier to have that face-to-face one-on-one visit. But then on the other hand, in some counties where maybe there's more land than there are people, it may be a little more spaced out and harder to get from point A to point B. But honestly, especially in these counties, face-to-face makes the biggest impact in terms of building those relationships and connecting with the audience. And so that is going to be their main form. They'll also do flyers and other types of advertisements, but really that face-to-face seems to make the biggest difference. Now, when we look at program implementation, of course, if there's less people, there may be less people for classes, or sometimes it might be hard for them to find classes in general. And honestly, this all goes back to that foundation. Speaking with some of the agents and educators, what they found most effective was building that foundation before they went into market with that partner. So that was really able to make the biggest impact in being able to have successful programming, to have numbers, to have participants show up, and really maximizing on a situation that may not be ideal in terms of number of participants, but making those quality connections. You can go to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to look at some of the challenges and solutions for our urban and larger populations. And as I mentioned, going through these, it really is quite similar when you hear some of their challenges and solutions. And so for one, I think the big obvious one is population is usually a little larger, which is great because classes would be in high demand. it's easier to find sites. But one common challenge that maybe many people don't consider, knowing that our series are usually 4 or more sessions, and we're needing our participants to show up again, they have a lot of issues with retention. So sometimes they may have one group at a center, and then the following week, a lot of those participants have changed out. And in order to help reach out to as many people as are in their population, knowing that there are so many people that are coming in and out, it really is a challenge to provide those makeup classes, but then also to understand that you can only do so much at one place. And so what we do to make sure that we can spread our reach as far as possible is that the agents and educators will be able to focus one curriculum per focus area. So our core focus areas of nutrition, gardening, and physical activity, they make sure that they're focusing on one curriculum per fiscal year within that site, and then they'll rotate out maybe to the other 2 core focus areas so that they get a well-rounded view, and then also they're able to maximize their efforts at other locations that would also need their attention, and then making sure that there's enough to go around, basically. And when we think about the partnerships and stakeholders, it may be a little bit harder to get those lasting connections because of population saturation. You know, you're kind of vying for attention sometimes in these larger populations. There's other organizations and there's other programs going on, that it's really important that you make that lasting impression and that we stand out. And so one thing that is really helpful for our agents, we were able to create a suite of promotional videos that has snippets of a lot of the programs that we offer. And so they're able to bring those to sites so people could see on hand, like, what is it that we're providing? What is it that we're going to be doing with these people? And kind of get their buy-in also to know what is it that this site might find most effective. And that way the programming, even both in the rural and urban, when they get that buy-in at the partnership level, it's a lot easier for people to show up when they know it's a topic that is actually important to them, or that they're going to be able to take home and use in their everyday lives. And also, in addition to the promotional videos, for each of our sessions, we provide our nutrition educational reinforcement items that are items that the participants can take with them home to kind of bring home the message of whatever was taught in that lesson. So something tangible that they'll be able to take. So having those visuals and something that is a solid, basically a solid buy-in for them, is going to be more likely of a connection than if they were to just pick up the phone and call. And speaking of that, with marketing, it's similar to with rural, but different in the sense that the face-to-face is vital because they want to be able to stand out in the crowd. So of course, if you see a face, you're going to be more likely to remember it. And then also distance might play a role in here as well, knowing that some counties, if they are urban or have a larger population, it may be a little bit more spaced out. And so it's really important for them. They focus a lot on making appointments with partners, reaching out beforehand, allocating specific marketing days, and letting that site or that partner know beforehand what it is that they're hoping to bring in to set up that meeting. And we've seen a lot of great progress with that, and a lot of success where people are able to make that connection and make a lasting connection that way as well. And so, as I mentioned, with the program implementation, it can be tricky, yes, because as we mentioned, sometimes it may not be the same people every time, but they do a really good job at offering makeup sessions to be able to provide and meet people where they are. And then also knowing that it's a larger group, we really focus on bringing in those volunteers to help manage the size of the class so that nobody gets left out. Because in these larger settings, it can be really easy for someone to fade into the background. And then considering that might be the reason they don't show up the next week if they don't feel that there was a connection in that room full of a bunch of other people. So we really value our volunteers. Our Master Wellness volunteers also play a big role in implementing a lot of these programs with us. Next slide, please. Okay, so you'll see some familiar things here. I wanted to talk a little bit about how the curriculum supports the efforts that are done in the field in these communities. So following that structure of that anchor, add, apply, and away, most of our series will follow that structure. And even if they don't, they all have a very systematic way of connecting each piece together. So the beginning of the lesson flows perfectly towards the end of the lesson. But one thing that is unique and makes a huge impact is the way that they can tailor it to what they need. So for example, the add and the apply in both of our adult and youth curricula, the add and the apply will give options for what you can do. So what kind of activity you might want to do, or some kind of tool that you're going to use in the lesson. So that way you can change it up based on the location that you're in, or the size of the room that you're in, or what the setup is. Maybe you're outdoors, maybe you're indoors, maybe, you know, it's a very small room, what have you, so that you can plan ahead and you can use the options that are going to be best for you. And so that makes it a lot easier for them to be able to trust that curriculum to support them in their efforts of reaching their community in the best way that's possible. Next slide, please. So I just want to highlight a few things because I think across board, and we've seen it considering we're in over 200 of the 254 counties in Texas, we've really seen that our agents and educators have been really successful in building those partnerships and creating those programs that really do make an impact, and that people are showing up and that people are benefiting from them. And in 2023, there were 492 partnerships that were made with community agents in schools. And we had over 27,000 direct contacts, and additionally over 2.1 million throughout our other outlets like our social media, newsletters, health fairs, and the such. So overall, we do see that, yes, there are challenges, but our agents, our educators, our staff, we all work together to support each other to make sure that no matter where we're doing this programming, that the Better Living for Texans program is catering to all different types of communities in Texas. And yes, so you can go to my next slide. And I just want to say thank you all for listening, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, for that presentation. I do not see any questions yet in the Q&A, but if you do have any questions, feel free to enter those in, and we can enter those live, or we can type responses as we move on to the next presentation. We will go ahead and move on to flourishing in recovery. How cooperative extension supported gardening and nutrition education can support recovery capital.
Hey, I'm Bethany Pratt. If you can, yep, so let's skip to the next slide. I'm going to be presenting on behalf of our whole team today. I'm with Kentucky's Nutrition Education Program. We can skip to the next slide. Just as a little background information, the University of Kentucky Nutrition Education Program is situated within the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service, as are many folks in this group. So with that, we have worked with, and a part of our extension system, there have been 2 statewide extension community assessments to identify the needs of Kentuckians. In both 2019 and then the most recent one in 2023, supporting Kentuckians in substance use recovery is a top priority across the state. This correlates really well with what is happening within the nutrition education program, where in advance of that 2019 study, it was found that about 60% of our nutrition program educators were already teaching programming in substance use recovery centers, which pushed NEP to create the very recently finished Healthy Choices for Your Recovering Body curriculum, which is nutrition education taught by our educators, specifically focusing on the needs, nutritional needs of folks who are in substance use recovery. We have thought about this and built on this through the Recovery Garden Toolkit, which is a policy and systems environment extension of the Healthy Choices for Your Recovering Body curriculum. It utilizes the rich agricultural heritage of Kentucky and that farming and agricultural background that many folks have. to create programming that supports holistic approaches. Next slide. With all of that, and thanks to our team, who you can see listed here, we started bringing in practitioners, right? Those nutrition educators within Extension who were already teaching nutrition programming at substance use recovery centers, our county agents who were partnering with them, plus folks in the state extension realm, as well as people who are in substance use recovery and then staff at those centers. We started convening folks in 2020, applied for a grant, and created the Recovery Garden Toolkit. Next slide. The Recovery Garden Toolkit is currently in the final stages of publication, and we are so excited about that. And what this is a guide for extension agents and nutrition educators as well to work together on building effective partnerships with substance use recovery centers. We are utilizing a team approach of extension. We have extension educators utilizing our wonderful Healthy Choices for Your Recovering Body curriculum, as well as extension agents who are specialists in horticulture to work together in a team environment to support gardening and nutrition education at recovery centers. Because all recovery centers are different, we are providing this in a toolkit framework, so guides on how to set up a partnership with a substance use recovery center that works for both. And then through that, we built out resources, best practices, and program plan ideas targeted both to the extension agent and then resources that that agent can utilize with participants. Next slide. The whole toolkit was put together utilizing a community organizing framework. In the broader nutrition education world, this looks at thinking about how do we augment the direct nutrition education that folks are doing it and shift it into a policy and systems and environment change. We're doing that by helping support leadership development or building agency, which is our community organizing term. So we're looking at supporting extension agents and extension professionals to create a leadership structure at those substance use recovery centers. And then supporting the people at the substance use recovery centers to build their own internal agency. So building, creating, or augmenting their existing leadership skills, supporting those folks to learn new skills and or empower them to use their existing agricultural knowledge in combination with some of the research from the University of Kentucky. Alongside that, we're also looking at building solidarity or supporting positive group cohesion. And that is just relationship building. So helping extension agents and nutrition assistants be comfortable working with a broader audience, building those relationships and trusted community partnerships between extension and substance use recovery centers and folks in substance use recovery. Again, meeting people where they are at the substance use recovery center, supporting them in their journey and building up a group capacity for change and success and all of that. So we're bringing people together across difference. Next slide. So all of this is a part of this recovery capital framework. Substance use recovery centers look at this in general. So recovery capital, just a little definition here, is all of those resources that individuals in recovery can draw on to support successful long-term recovery. So the gardening, the nutrition education are pieces of this, along with the many other programs and resources that folks in substance use recovery are receiving if they are a part of a formalized program. So we are really, again, thinking about how gardening in conjunction with nutrition education, in conjunction with the other supports at a substance use recovery center can support all kinds of different recovery capital, which you can see listed here, to support Kentuckians in long-term recovery. Next slide. So With all of this, we have been building a recovery garden toolkit. And then in 2023, in the winter of 2023, we did a call for applications through our extension network and asked for extension agents and nutrition educators to apply together to receive support and funding through our grant from the Department of Agriculture to implement both nutrition education and gardens at substance use recovery centers across Kentucky. So we see here all the stars are the sites. So these represent primarily rural, but some urban sites. Some of these sites are residential substance use recovery centers, and some of them are day programming. So we had some are men, some are women, some are mixed. We had a diversity of implementing sites across the state. Next slide. Along with this, we launched a community of practice, and this was targeting leadership development for our county extension agents and nutrition educators. It was monthly trainings for the team. We utilized a peer story telling method where we invited the practitioners and those folks who helped create the Recovery Garden Toolkit to come and share their lived experiences of implementing joint gardening and nutrition education programming at substance use recovery centers, and then paired that with the drafts of the tools that are in the toolkit, kind of illustrating how all these best practices and the tools in that toolkit can actually be used, and tips and tricks. Through that network and community building, we were able to support extension agents in particular to feel more confident and empowered to move into working with other SNAP eligible populations in the state, which was wonderful, and as well as to help them improve their programming through gardening at substance use recovery centers. Through this community of practice in that cohort of 7, we also offered one-on-one support from myself and then my faculty counterpart in community and leadership development. And through the toolkit, we offer everyone a menu of evaluation tools based on the particular participant population in the substance use recovery center, as well as the program structure and how the nutrition educator and the agent chose to work together at that site. Next slide. So we had folks implement starting in the spring of 2023. And from there, we had 7 folks implement. 5 were able to fully go through the program and report back results. So 5 of our 7 counties were able to administer participant surveys, which asked directed questions focusing on leadership development and recovery capital. So meaningfully across those participant survey results, people were very satisfied with the gardening component of their substance use recovery program. They really enjoyed being outdoors, enjoyed learning, and experiencing a different realm of recovery. We also asked all of our recovery gardens to turn in harvest data. So through those 5 counties that turned in harvest data, folks grew 431 pounds of produce, which turns out to about $806 in savings for those substance use recovery centers. Next slide. Lessons learned. In 2023, with all of this piloting, we learned a lot about what we're going to do different this year. The first thing we learned was that the individualized support for agents and assistants was really key. The community of practice was great, but due to a lot of the challenges with scheduling and getting folks together, doing small group check-ins with just those county-based folks. So looking at checking in with the nutrition educator and all of the county agents involved is where we were really able to dig in and help folks problem solve based on their site and situation. One thing we also learned is that we needed to provide additional training for the agents on administering participant evaluation. A lot of our respondents just circled 4s, which was very satisfied, all the way down our very short questionnaire. So we looked at that in comparison to the nutrition education pre-post surveys that folks administered and noticed that there are some lessons that we can learn from how our nutrition educators provide surveying and help participants work through surveys that we could duplicate with agents going forward. Another thing you learned is that the post-test only survey was best for participants for evaluating recovery capital. We had several options, including a pre-post option, hoping that we could tag along with our nutrition education program that is 6 consecutive weeks. What we learned was that in practice that, and due to some of the scheduling at substance use recovery centers, participants who were in the nutrition program didn't always get to complete the gardening program. And or there was just it's a very transient population. So maybe the gardening was not valued as much, or people were unable to participate in 6 to 8 weeks of gardening as planned to utilize the pre-post survey. So while we had folks who were very excited at the beginning to use a pre-post participant evaluation, in reality, we only got 2 folks to actually go through and complete our pre and our post among all participants. So for this year, we're going to shift to a post-test only option. And finally, kind of with that is, again, looking at how we can support agents and assistants to look at how they can juggle their programming opportunities and bring in other certified volunteers through our programs. So that is a very short snapshot of what we have done for this past year. And next slide. For any questions.
Thank you so much, Bethany, for that wonderful presentation. There's one participant in the chat has asked for the slides, and we will do our best to confirm that the presenters are okay with sharing slides. And if so, we will also have those posted on the ASNNA website along with the recordings as well. If you have other questions, please enter them in the chat, but we are going to move forward to our next presentation, which is focused on adapting a statewide produce prescription program to meeting community needs and improving health with Katie.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here and really have enjoyed the presentation so far. My name is Katie Leet, and I am the SNAP-Ed Program Manager with Open Hand. Next slide, please. And just to give a little background, Open Hand is based in Atlanta, but we serve the entire state of Georgia through various food as medicine programs, including providing medically tailored meals around the state and various nutrition services, including our SNAP-Ed work, which I'm going to talk about one of our biggest SNAP-Ed programs today. Next slide, please. And just for a little bit of background, I know that food as medicine is something that has really come into the space and the different types of work that we have going on within SNAP-Ed and other nutrition programs around the country. But just for some context, food as medicine programs are largely programs that are providing food or education to prevent and treat and really target chronic diseases at the community level. And so oftentimes these are along with or in place of medical interventions. Usually there's a clinical partner involved in carrying them out. And these include nutrition incentive programs, which I know several agencies work on, medically tailored meals, and of course, produce prescription programs. Next slide, please. The first thing that I think it's important to note when designing or thinking about designing any sort of food as medicine programs, but specifically the produce prescription, is the target audience. And I'll talk a little bit about our recruitment method and who we're bringing in for this program. But I think it's important just to note some of these metrics in Georgia specifically. We do see high rates of food insecurity throughout the state. Also high SNAP benefit redemption, and I guess just as a national statistic, we do know that a majority of the adult population is either overweight or obese or at risk for or living with a chronic disease. And so these types of programs can really target different risk factors that people are experiencing, as well as reduce healthcare spending for the participants who are involved. Next slide, please. And so just to give a broad overview of what our produce prescription program, or what we call PRX, looks like, in the SNAP Ed Toolkit, it's actually listed as Cooking Matters for Healthcare Partners. And this is a 6-month program which combines 6 weeks of Cooking Matters nutrition education with weekly produce box deliveries over the course of 6 months. And so following that 6 weeks of education, we basically allow participants to continue receiving the weekly produce box, and we do monthly reunion check-ins with them, but otherwise we're really letting them adopt those behavior changes that they learned in the direct nutrition education course, just to see over time how they can improve health outcomes, food security, and a couple other metrics that we measure for. Currently, we conduct these around the state of Georgia in 2 languages, and we are moving into our 9th year of this program. And you can see some of the aims listed below for the program, which I'll kind of touch on later. Next slide, please. This is kind of just a visual showing the flow. And as I mentioned before, it all starts with that healthcare or clinical partner. And so we really rely on our clinical partnerships around the state to help us refer patients. And as I mentioned, our target community isn't only those who are living with or at risk for chronic disease, but also those living with food insecurity, because we know that these 2 things are linked. And so if we can impact someone's food and nutrition choices while they're at risk for chronic disease before they're actually in a chronic disease state, we can improve their health outcomes over time. And so after they're referred to the class, we'll enroll them in an upcoming class where, as I mentioned, they'll participate in 6 weeks of direct nutrition education and then receive weekly produce and some other incentives as well. And then they will continue in the program for a total of 6 months, receiving monthly reunion support and continuing to receive those produce boxes along the way. Next slide, please. And here's just another visual timeline showing the program, and each line on this timeline represents a point in which we are collecting data, and then the dots are representing different touch points that we have with participants throughout the 6-month program. So it just kind of gives a visual overview of how the program works and what the scheduling looks like. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to touch on all of these outcomes, but I would like to note that we have seen improved retention. This is all data from last fiscal year, but we've seen improved retention over time, specifically for a 6-month program, which is a pretty long time for a participant to stay engaged, especially if they're living with a chronic disease or in a low-income area. So we have improved our retention. I'll talk a bit about that adapted model later and how we've done that. And I think it's also important to note at the 6-week mark, we've seen some improvements across the different indicators that we're measuring, including food security, including blood pressure, and a few other biometric screeners that we're measuring for. At the 6-month mark, we're not necessarily seeing vast improvements or decreases in some of those indicators, but something that we do like to note and are proud of is that we're seeing sustained changes over time. So from 6 weeks to 6 months, participants are able to sustain those behavior changes. And I think that's really showing us that we're helping them reach a level of behavior change that is comfortable for them and sustainable even without the direct nutrition education. So as they're receiving those produce boxes, they're able to maintain these lifestyle changes that they've learned through the direct nutrition education.
Can you hear me? I think my volume got cut off.
We can hear you now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, we can, Katie.
Okay, great. Sorry, my headphones disconnected.
No, it's okay.
So just to move on, again, I'm not going to read through this feedback, but I think it's important to note that participants are getting a wide variety of outcomes from the program. You can see they're mentioning changes in their cooking, shopping, and eating habits, which is the whole idea behind the Cooking Matters curriculum, but they're also noticing changes in mood, energy levels, and blood pressure. And so that's really encompassing the different changes that we're trying to make through the 6-month program. Next slide, please.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some adaptations and challenges. I'm not going to touch on all of these, but again, the slides will be shared and I'm happy to elaborate with questions. So one of the things that I think is important to note with any program like this is that, especially when you're recruiting folks living with or at risk for chronic disease, oftentimes they're going to assume that we are enrolling them in a weight loss program. And we really like to emphasize that this is a behavior change program. We don't expect folks to lose weight. We are measuring weight, blood pressure, and things like that, but we don't expect a weight change. And so I think just making that a key from the beginning helps to reduce stigma and keeps participants in the program. Next slide, please. And then from rural to urban settings, I'll just touch on a couple things. We've seen transportation and accessibility issues across both. And so we've done our best to try and mitigate those through providing transportation, providing funding through gas cards so that participants are able to make it there without having to be held back by the cost of fuel. And then another thing that we've done specifically in South Georgia is that we've adapted our recruitment strategy to include those who are at risk for chronic disease rather than just those who are in a negative disease state. And we noticed that our retention was low because we were recruiting folks who were really suffering from chronic disease and maybe had doctor's appointments or mobility issues and weren't able to make it to class. And so by adopting that strategy, as I mentioned before, we can really meet people where they are, but also be sure to impact their lifestyles and get those behavior changes before they're in a deep state of chronic disease. Next slide, please. A couple of best practices that we've noted with our program, I think compared to some others, I know there are lots of different ways to carry out these programs. One of the things we're really proud of is our reunion model. I think being able to give participants a way to come back together, share updates and recipes and things they've been learning and maintaining over time, and also to reinforce some of the lessons that they've learned along the way is really great. It also allows us to sustain that context or that contact, and then of course collect data at the 6-month period. And then I did already kind of talk about that improved retention due to the adopted recruitment model, which I think is something that has helped us to improve the feasibility of the program for participants. Next slide, please. A couple adaptations that we've made branching off of this program, just as we've seen that some of our populations have different needs, or we can really scale down or up the program based on those needs. One of them is a step-down model that we're currently piloting, and this is combining our medically tailored meals with the program. So we're providing participants with those meals for 4 or 8 weeks, and then they begin the 6-week class with the produce boxes. And this is really showing them, here are some healthy meals, and let's change your eating behaviors leading up to the class, and then giving them the tools to maybe make those changes in their lives themselves. Another thing we've adopted recently are just expanded partnerships, new clinical partners, being able to reach different populations, including a teen population that we piloted a class with in Columbus last year. And we're also thinking about piloting a family version of the class where we can engage all members of the family. Something else we're working on is engaging peer mentors and peer champions with new cohorts, just to kind of show them the long-term sustained impacts of the class. And then, of course, we're always looking to improve our assessment tools and evaluation just to be able to test for impacts of the program over time. Next slide, please. I know that was a really quick overview, but thank you all for listening. I'm happy to answer questions. I think a couple had popped up in the chat. And then if anything else comes up, please feel free to reach out to me. This QR code goes to our website. And as I said, the slides will be available. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. We are going to actually move our break a little bit shorter so that Katie has time to answer some of the questions that are in the chat, because there's quite a few of them and they're great questions. So if you don't mind, Katie, we're going to have you answer those live. If you need to step away for your break, you can, but we will still take a break. The first question is, how do medically tailored meals fit within the scope of SNAP-Ed? Isn't it borderline medical nutrition therapy?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned,
Open Hand has a variety of nutrition services that we provide to different communities. I think because we are a food as medicine organization also doing SNAP Ed work, there's a lot of push from within us, but also there have been a lot of pushes recently with the government to provide these services outside of SNAP Ed funding. And so I think being able to combine them, especially when we're thinking about working primarily with a population living with chronic disease or at risk for chronic disease, it's kind of combining the SNAP Ed component with what, yes, I would call MNT. So it is a bit separate. It's definitely not a program fit for all, but I think it really lends itself nicely to the work that Open Hand is doing within our community here in Georgia.
Additional question, what funding structure do you use to support the produce boxes and gas cards?
Yeah, we always get questions like this, especially when speaking to a SNAP Ed audience. Obviously, we are using outside funding to support the monthly or the weekly produce boxes, gas cards, and other incentives that we provide. And we're really fortunate to be a pretty large organization. So we have a grants team that can reach out to potential programs and donors to support kind of that end of the program. But the direct nutrition education and the reunion sessions and all of that is funded by our SNAP Ed program. So those are all still tied in with our SNAP Ed work, and we're able to report them annually as the Cooking Matters for Healthcare Partners project.
Great. There's a couple questions on funding. I think you kind of covered those. Specifically, who are the partners making the local food donation boxes possible?
Yeah, so we do pay for the produce. It's not donated, but again, because of the work Open Hand does around the state, we are lucky. We have a network of delivery drivers throughout the state, and we also have a network of farmers and different organizations that we're able to source produce from. And so in South Georgia and in Columbus, we had pre-existing partnerships with a couple food delivery organizations who help us out with that. And then here in the metro area, we have a produce organization and farm that we already worked with on the medically tailored meal side of our work. So they're the ones who are able to provide those local produce boxes, and then Open Hands team of delivery drivers who are delivering the medically tailored meals are able to deliver the produce for the program as well.
Great. And I know you were able to share some of the outcomes, but there was an additional follow-up on how the gardening helped people with recovery, and if you had any maybe long-term outcomes yet.
That was for Kentucky, I think, Dawn.
Oh, okay. Sorry. What was the process for partnering with healthcare providers?
It can be a long process depending on their interests. I feel like some of our partnerships are formed by our program kind of being promoted throughout the communities, and healthcare partners will reach out to us. Otherwise, it's a lot of networking. We do several like lunch and learns and things like that just to be able to show clinicians and healthcare partners what the program is and what it includes and what any sort of responsibility or expectation on their end would be. And then we provide training and referral materials to them to help us to refer to the classes. And then usually there will be a community health worker involved from the clinic who helps us with recruitment and scheduling classes when it works for the participants who they've helped to recruit in the clinics.
Are you able to build clinical partnerships for food insecurity and referral to SNAP itself?
I think one thing that we try to do in our classes is once they end, we always share out a resource sheet. And again, we keep those reunions and that connection after the weekly direct nutrition education ends so that participants can ask any questions. And then I think especially once the produce boxes end, it's important to leave participants with resources because they might have not improved their food security status enough to maintain those changes over time without the produce boxes. So I would say the main way we do that is through providing like resource sheets or local resources. But I don't think we have I don't think we've formed any partnerships around that. We mostly just provide the resources to them, or if they ask, we're always happy to do that as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie, for answering all of those questions. We are now going to pause for a break period. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If Kentucky or Rhode Island is here and wants to answer questions in relation to the last two questions in the chat and type those, feel free to do so. And if we will see everyone again at 1 o'clock. Okay, at this time, we are going to restart our presentation, moving into block 2, which is focused on communications.
Okay, and with that, as Dawn just said, welcome back, everybody. We're starting with block 2, which is communications. And we are going to start with core competencies for social media and marketing initiatives. So I'll let the team take it away.
Hey y'all, I think I'm starting us off. I'm Latoya Drake with Kentucky Nutrition Education Program with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. And we're going to talk a little bit today about core competencies for social media marketing initiatives. And I was happy to be a part of this discussion because sometimes in my role, I feel like I work and work and work, and there's no measurable deliverables or outcomes sometimes. It just feels like I'm just working and running. So it was awesome to get some definition to what we do. And we were guided through this process by DACM facilitators, Matt Abbott, Oriana Hawley, Sarah Mizik, Elena Serrano, Kate Fergus was a team leader, and John Moser. Next slide, please. So myself and other subject matter experts from across the nation were interviewed with a series of questions, discussions to talk about what we do in this role in social media management and marketing. These experts, including myself from the University of Kentucky and the Nutrition Education Program here, as well as Daniela Avellino, sorry if I mispronounced names. She's a graduate student technician at the University of Connecticut, Healthy Family Connecticut, SNAP-Ed. Keely Blankenship, she's a social media specialist with West Virginia University Extension Family Nutrition Program, Charleston, West Virginia. Stephanie DeBerry, and she's assistant director of the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, the Oklahoma Nutrition and Education Project. Myself, Morgan Gregg, social media and marketing strategist for Virginia Tech, Virginia Cooperative Extension Family Nutrition Program. Brittany Johnson, and she's the social marketing media coordinator with Utah State University, Create Better Health, Utah SNAP-Ed. Natalia Ocasio, and she's with the communications specialist and instructional designer at UF-IFAS Extension Family, Youth and Community Sciences, FNEP. And lastly, but not least, Beth Peralta, Senior Manager, Digital Nutrition Education, University of Illinois Extension Family and Consumer Sciences, SNAP-Ed, and FNEP. We all have the longest titles ever. Next slide.
All right, and that was a great transition because I have the next couple of slides for our team. So the purpose of this project was to develop a list of core competencies that could be required for social media coordinators. We had noted that there was growing importance for a list of core competencies within this field related to the growing use of social media and technology in the FNEP program and social media and social marketing within SNAP-Ed. So this would help inform the practices for both SNAP-Ed and FNEP programs and potentially could be used more broadly in other public health spaces. Next slide. So that oh, this is animated. So the method that was used is called DACUM, which is an acronym for Developing a Curriculum. And it is a job or occupational analysis method that uses expert workers in the occupation as panelists throughout the process. And it answers the question, what do you do? By using these subject matter experts. And as LaToya shared, there were 8 representatives from FNEP and SNAP-Ed organizations that participated in this process. And the workshop was conducted virtually over 14 and a half synchronous hours on July 31st through August 3rd of 2023. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so just to give you my a little bit of overview, one thing that I want to kind of mention with DACUM, and obviously we only have just a few minutes, but just to give a very quick crash course, one of the things that we were tasked with as subject matter experts was to define and document duties and tasks. So now I'm going to kind of go through the results that we found. So duties, tasks, and steps were actually not a part of DACUM. So what we found as our duties were coordinating social media campaigns, develop social media content, manage social media impact and engagement, manage digital communications, supervise social media team, support social media team and partners, and perform administrative tasks. Oh, there's one more, just kidding. Participate in professional development activities. I don't think there's any more. So one thing that I kind of want to just go through with each of these is that each part of these DACUM steps, they're very, very clear and very defined. So for duties, there's usually 6 to 12 per job. And then tasks, there's usually about 6 to 20 per duty and somewhere between 75 and 125 per job. So this doesn't show an all-inclusive list of our results, but these are just examples of what they are. And each of these statements has a very clear verb, an object, and a qualifier. So they are very, very defined. So a perfect example would be coordinating social media campaigns. An example task in order to fulfill that duty, one of the many tasks would be conduct a needs assessment for social media campaigns. And you can kind of go through each of these. So if we're developing content, there's many different types of content. So as we went through each of these, we defined create video social media content. There may also be, print, there may be visual. There are several different of these tasks within each of these duties. To kind of go through the rest of them pretty quickly, managing social media impact and engagement, you would actually need to develop the data collection tools, managing digital communications, promoting the creation of user-generated content, and so forth. So you can kind of see this was really systematic and broken down for this job. Next slide.
Hello, this slide's mine. So social media coordinators actually need more supplies, tools, and equipment than what you would expect when you kind of picture this type of role. So aside from basic office supplies like printers, laptops, and webcams, this role will need supplies that enable us to actually create content. So this can include everything from cameras, microphones, lighting equipment, and stuff like that, to recipe ingredients and the branded materials that are actually featured within the content. So when it comes to software and applications, a variety is needed to ensure the successful creation of quality content. So graphic design, as well as photo and video editing software are all required. And these would include products that you would find in the Adobe Creative Suite, as well as online applications like Canva. And of course, sometimes we also use stock asset subscriptions, and those are useful with creating content a little easier. And we also use survey software like Qualtrics and QR code generators. The last thing I wanted to kind of bring up as far as tools and equipment is that a lot of social media coordinators will use scheduling tools like HeyOrca and Hootsuite to kind of automate the posting process and better adhere to a posting schedule. And of course, all social media coordinators need access to the social media accounts that they're running. Next slide, please. So as far as future trends and concerns go, social media is ever changing, and social media specialists have to be able to adapt regularly to those changes. The platforms themselves are always being updated as new features are added and the algorithms are changed, and that affects how we post, what we post, and when we should post.
Some future trends that will impact the role include artificial intelligence, monetization of content, virtual reality, and more. And then some concerns are things like government regulations, as well as regulations imposed by universities and other employers, the outsourcing of the function, security issues, and quantifying our interactions for grant reporting purposes. So those are just some of those concerns. As you can see, there are a lot more. Next slide, please. I think this one was Brittany.
Hey, Brittany, we can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I started going and I was connected to my AirPods. Okay, so the DACOM process in general can be really effective for defining specific parts of a role. And by defining and elaborating on core competencies specifically can help leaders to better able communicate expectations and the needs of the employee while closing gaps for the position assessment. And this can be equally as effective for new hires as well as existing personnel in a role. Along with the core competencies, employee recruitment is another way that this process can be used to highlight the key tasks needed to be successful in a role while just setting clear expectations on day one. As jobs are always changing, like Keely mentioned, revising job descriptions can definitely be helpful to accurately reflect the position as it is always changing and evolving, just to keep the responsibilities and requirements of the job at hand very clear and accurate. Developing employee training plans is also helpful. It can help equip employees with the necessary tools and knowledge to excel within their role. And then managing and decision-making is also an effective outcome of this process by helping to clearly create clear-cut lines for the employee's task so they know what's expected while making decisions or while just managing different parts of their position. This just helps to have those really clear-cut lines. And then lastly, curricular development is also very helpful in this DACOM process. Next slide. And then these are just some of our funding acknowledgements.
Thank you, guys. I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A for, oh wait, yep, there's one. We got a question, y'all. Okay, how does the model accommodate PowerPoint feedback evaluation into the system? Can you give examples of unexpected findings and how they were used to improve and modify operations? I don't know if that's for y'all or not.
Hi, I can. Sue, is that this is Sarah.
Sue. Yeah. Hey, Sarah.
Hi. So how does the model accommodate, is it participant feedback evaluation into the system?
Yep, she said participant.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. This was actually a process done with social media experts and within our programs. So they were used to say what they did in their job, and that created a list of core competencies in the forms of duties and tasks that are required to perform their job. So we don't have participant feedback except in how they develop their content, and that is reflected within the core competencies, which will be available on the land-grant university program development team webpage. Did that answer your question? Also, if any of the other panelists have responses to how you use participant feedback.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to make sure nothing comes through. Sometimes they will right after I move to the next one. Okay. All right. If there's any more questions, y'all feel free. Sue said, I wondered how feedback usage was built into the model. Who does it?
If there are other panelists who would like to speak to how they use their participant feedback, then feel free. But otherwise, the model for participant, oh, Beth, you're coming on if you want to talk to
I was just going to share that, informally, we will receive feedback from participants on social media that's, shared on content that would be shared, and then we would utilize that feedback, whether it's something simple like likes or shares, we would use it to help inform like future content development. And then more formally, we've done some focus groups and other work on content that people are interested in hearing from us about.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Okay. And we are right at time to go to the next presentation. So if there's any further questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and the team can answer from there. But we'll move on to our next one, evaluating the effectiveness of a comprehensive social marketing campaign, Drink Water Georgia. And I will hand it off to the UGA team.
Thank you, Michaela. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation. My name is Emily Simpson, and I am the Evaluation Coordinator with UGA Snap Ed.
Hey, my name is Tristan Webb. I'm the Social Marketing Coordinator for UGA Snap Ed. And we're just speaking on behalf of our team here that's listed. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So this slide kind of gives you a little bit of background about us. We've been around for 10 years now as a program, UGA Snap Ed. We are one of 5 Snap Ed implementing agencies in Georgia. This specifically is our 3rd year doing Drink Water Georgia, as it's titled. But we've been doing a water program in the summer for 4 years now. Our first year was a preliminary. It wasn't called Drink Water Georgia, but yeah, this is our 4th year doing water content. We have several other beverage choice consumption programs. We include elements of this in Food Talk Better You, which is a program that we run. We have classes for. We also have Healthy Childcare Georgia, or HCCG. And we also have several videos that promote healthy beverage choices. A lot of what we do is classes, and we also have e-learning on our website. So people can follow up the classes with e-learning, or if they're not in a county that has SnapEd programming directly through classes, then they can just do our e-learning approach. And of course, we also have social marketings and a variety of PSCs that we're working on. I also wanted to mention that at the bottom, we have a link, and we can share this if you like. We can share this afterwards. Just let us know. Send us an email. We have our contacts on here. But we have the SnapEd toolkit, or Food Talk Better You is a part of the SnapEd toolkit. So I just wanted to mention that. And next slide, please. So Drinkwater Georgia, to narrow in on that specifically, is a program that, like I mentioned, we've been running this. It's our 4th year running a water program, 3rd year at Drinkwater Georgia. We have several different methods and mediums that we use for this. First and foremost, we have our texting campaign. That runs from primarily June through August. We start promoting it around that time, and then the texts typically start at the beginning of July, and they run all the way to the end of August. We use social media to run ads for the texting campaign, but also just for our program as a whole. We have blogs, we have our website, we have like a sub-site. It's just water.foodtalk.org that we use a lot of blogs for, and we link back using social media to that. We also did shopping cart ads last year. So that was that's something we've done previously as well, and we'd done billboards as well before, but this past year we just decided to focus on shopping cart ads. And then we have print media, so we have brochures, flyers, like postcard sized. So that image there is like a postcard sized infused water recipe. These are all things that we give out during the summer. We work with our implementing our offices in different counties. We have 9 total that we're working with. And then we also open up to the rest of UGA Extension to promote in their own counties by tabling or at outreach events, things like that. So it's very comprehensive for the whole state, and it's open to a lot of different offices throughout. Yeah, if you go to the next slide, please.
So this slide is a comprehensive overview of the key evaluation indicators by evaluation type, being process, outcome, and impact across our various media channels. This table highlights the best available metrics across these channels, being print media, mass media, online media, and texting slash electronic media. So while these indicators are what we have implemented, we are greatly looking forward to the social marketing toolkit to ensure that there is streamlined reporting across channels, as we know that some variation does exist. Next slide, please. So this table is a little bit more specific. It outlines our evaluation measures. So these measures, the intention was to measure both intention of our participants as well as consumption. So specifically, we looked at respondents' intention to drink water instead of sugary beverages, along with their intention and consumption of water and SSBs. This slide also includes our specific survey questions and response options that were utilized. Next slide. So our impact evaluation utilized both administrative and analytic data on program reach and dosage throughout this intervention. So self-administered post-intervention surveys were conducted in 6 eligible zip codes and 6 eligible control zip codes. These areas were matched on both socio-demographic and economic characteristics via GIS. These zip codes were sent survey recruitment postcards via EDDM, which stands for Every Door Direct Mail. So this flowchart on the bottom of the screen outlines the number of EDDM postcards that were sent to these two entities, so the intervention and control groups. It also, the farthest row, shows our response rate. So we collected 48 responses from our intervention zip code and 65 responses from our control zip codes. We've also included an image, a screenshot of the front and back of the postcards that were mailed to our participants. It's important to note that we did incentivize the completion of the survey through a raffle of gift cards, which was funded through an external funding source in the hopes of increasing our response rate and kind of encouraging some engagement across respondents. Next slide, please. So our impact evaluation measures were collected via a Qualtrics survey, which participants could access from that QR code that was printed on our postcards, which we saw previously. This survey collected data related to respondent demographics, which we know are super important, along with daily water and sugar sweetened beverage consumption, which we had outlined earlier. Next slide, please.
So this slide is sort of just a grouping of different things that we've produced, graphics mostly. I'll just start from the top. We have our billboard at the very top. Like I said, we didn't have any last year, but we had them in previous years. Our logos to the right of that. That's typically on all of our graphics. We have, to the bottom left, we have graphics used either on social media or also in our texting campaign. So those will accompany text messages about reminders to drink water or just healthy information about water consumption. And to the bottom right, we have 2 handouts. These are printed. One's kind of covered, but they're infused water recipes. So they're fun, they are visually pleasing, and they just are great for people to pick up at tabling events. And then sort of in the middle to the right are, and then also in the direct middle, those are ads that we've ran on Google and then Facebook as well, and Instagram, just targeting different communities. So for example, the farmer drinking water was more so targeted towards rural areas. So yeah, and the questions on the left were questions taken directly from our EDDM mailers, the survey that was attached to that. They're associated with that. So next slide, please. These are some numbers. Don't, I know it's never encouraging to look at a bunch of numbers at one time, but we put this on here to illustrate that for some things, it's difficult to get numbers from online media. For example, if you look at online media to the right, far right, or the blue section, you look at Twitter. Twitter doesn't, or X now, does not provide unique reach. They provide a single number, and it's sort of unclear whether or not it's reach or impressions. Facebook doesn't provide organic reach. They just provide impressions. They do for ads, but they don't for organic. And then, of course, you know, a lot of these, like, it's hard to tell our mass media or retailer ads. We have the number of impressions that we have from our shopping carts, but of course, that trying to find reach for that is these are all numbers that are proprietary largely, so it's just what they provide to us, and that's what we have to go on. Next slide, please.
This slide outlines our impact evaluation results. So the mean age of our participants, those who responded to our survey, was 52.1 years old. The majority of our respondents identified as female, resided in a 2-adult household, and completed more than high school. While there were no statistically significant differences between our groups, we did observe differences related to frequency between our groups. So when we compare our intervention and our control zip codes, we saw higher rates of daily water consumption post-intervention between our intervention zip codes and our control zip codes, decreased soda consumption in our intervention zip code compared to our control group zip codes, and interestingly enough, increased fruit drink, sports drink, and punch consumption in our intervention group compared to our control group. In regard to graphics and advertisements, on average, respondents in our intervention zip codes reported higher level of exposure to advertisements compared to those within our control zip codes. Furthermore, when stage of change was assessed between these groups, respondents residing within our intervention zip codes reported greater overall intention to drink more water, which was very exciting. All in all, to summarize, the culmination of these findings highlight that the application of EDDM, Every Door Direct Mail, recruitment among intervention and control zip codes proves to be a feasible option to examine behavior change via a comprehensive social marketing campaign. And our next slide is just our thank you slide.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. I hope we were able to summarize adequately what we've been working on. And as I mentioned, if you would like a copy, please take a screenshot or take a picture of those emails. We can get that to you. So thanks very much. Any questions?
There is a question in the chat. So, Drinkwater Georgia, great work and so many questions. This is a bit aside. Can you talk about how partners were involved? For example, did you pay for your shopping cart ads or were they donated? Was there pushback from the store? Was there additional uptake by other partners? So kind of a three-parter there.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And then Emily, if you want to chime in after. So we did pay for shopping carts, shopping cart ads. We worked with an ad company that places things for us. We paid for them. They were not donated. We did receive some pushback from the stores, not directly to us, but the agency we were working with kind of informed us that we would have better participation with our shelf talkers, which originally was our plan to use, have little signage on shelves to remind people if they're buying water, or put them strategically in the store to promote water consumption and to promote our website. We were informed that a lot of grocery stores wouldn't want to do that unless we were promoting one of their water bottle brands. So we didn't, we weren't going to do that. So that kind of limited us there to sort of do either posters on the outside of the store, which was also limited, or doing shopping cart ads, which every grocery store pretty much has shopping carts. We didn't have any partners involved in that specifically for the shopping carts. That was just kind of us directly, other than our agency we worked with.
Thank you, Tristan. Oh yeah, go ahead, Hyunjin.
Question, yeah, about the methodology, evaluation methodology. Was there any way to prevent the spillover effect or the contaminated sample? And also another question is, how did you distribute it to the postcards, the evaluation postcards? That's the question.
Great questions. Unfortunately, no definitive way to avoid any spillover. And that's something that's come up in discussions broadly is if somebody lives in one location but travels somewhere else and is in a store with our shopping cart ads, there's that potential of crossover. So important note on that. And your second question was about dissemination of postcards. So EDDM is a process that we coordinated, and Tristan can maybe talk a little bit more on this, with our printing company. They printed our postcards. We sent them, with the help of our GIS team, the zip codes and the mail routes that we wanted these postcards sent. So we did the background work, and then the legwork was some other people, which is always nice to kind of divvy up efforts. But we defined our mail routes and things were disseminated as we outlined.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just briefly to follow up, we work with the GIS team to go through and help us find eligible counties, and specifically the zip codes that are eligible based on a variety of parameters, depending on what we need at the time. So we kind of reached out. We asked about we determined best places to send the intervention EDDM surveys, and then of course we had control ones that were provided to us by them. So yeah, they're awesome. They're very helpful for our team.
And we have time for one more question, and it's in the Q&A. How are you able to share out your e-learning modules and also get people to opt into your texting program?
So a big part of this past summer, summer's promotion was using Meta. So promoting ads on Facebook and Instagram. We have previously promoted e-learning through advertising as well. We rely heavily on our digital advertising because we can reach a lot of people for a smaller amount of money, and also a lot of people in rural areas may not have access to things like billboards or more physical advertising. But most people have a cell phone, so that's kind of a better way to reach a larger audience. And that's kind of what we also promoted. We also had in-person tabling events and things like that. We had a postcard that had a way to just text the phone number to text into, and then the keyword water, so they would text in directly that way. They would sign up at events that we had at classes to join. That would get mailed back to us. We'd manually input it. So we had a variety of ways for people to join. And if you like to reach out, I'm happy to talk more about that. Just one-on-one. I know we're kind of running short on time.
Thank you, Tristan. There is one more quick question too, and we do have a little bit of wiggle room here, but can you talk about the uptake of messages by sister SNAP-Ed programs, WIC, food banks, rec centers, schools, and so forth? Any barriers, any unexpected victories or challenges?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's have any of these groups partnered with us and sharing similar messages? We have a recruitment coordinator. Her name's Janine Delane, and she works with a lot of these groups. But we largely for Drinkwater Georgia, we promote among extension agents in different counties. So they already have a lot of connections within their counties that reach far beyond what we could know at the state level. So whenever they sign up to receive some materials, we send them to them, and then they may just include or go to a water event. In the summertime, there are lots of festivals and things like that people table at, and they just have all these materials that we've sent them, and they talk about the program and they give them out. We had a lot of participation in several rural counties that were that we just hadn't talked to really much before, and that I had made personal connections with as well. That just had, ordered a lot. They had a lot of events going on, and that was nice. We'd also worked with CareSource before to promote some of these our initiatives as well. And I believe we had an event at several Walmarts. We have collaborations with food banks. We've sent them some recipes and some handouts as well, so they can, coordinate with people who visit the food pantries. So yeah, it's going well, and it's pretty extensive. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, y'all. And that will be our last question for the UGA team for now. If there's any other questions for them, I'm sure they'll stay on till the end, so feel free to put them in the Q&A. But we will go ahead and move to our last presentation of the day with Ms. Kathleen Davis, improving social media's reach to promote healthy behaviors among parents of SNAP-Ed eligible preschoolers. And I will pass it over to her and her team.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. Okay.
Yes, you're good.
So I'm Kathleen Davis. I'm from Texas Women's University, and we're located in Denton, Texas. We are relatively new to, well, we're very new to SNAP-Ed. We are actually subcontractors to our implementing agency, which is the University of North Texas. We are both located in Denton, Texas. And for those of you not familiar with Denton, it's just about 40 miles north of Dallas and Fort Worth. So we're both have rural areas surrounding us and then more urban areas to our southeast and southwest. So our project, and I don't know if we're sharing screen yet or slides yet.
Can y'all see my screen?
Sorry, maybe it's my view.
Nope, you're good.
Yes, we can see him, Michaela.
Okay. Sorry, it's me that's messed up.
It's okay. No
Okay,
worries.
sorry. Okay, we're all good. Next slide, please. Okay,
welcome.
so we've actually only been a SNAP-Ed provider since 2021. We're in our third year, and we started our social media presence more in 2022. So I feel like we're kind of babies compared to some of y'all presenting today, but we are working on trying to learn what we can from social media. So the University of North Texas does the physical activity side of this project, and then TWU does the nutrition side, and we have helped bring in Tarrant Area Food Bank, which is a large area food bank that helps partner with us on some of the education as well as potentially providing food. You all know social media is a popular source of nutrition and lifestyle information. The Pew Research Center does a study of sort of mobile phone use every year. And in their most recent survey, they found that 97% of US 18 to 29-year-olds own smartphones. They did show this as lower in the lowest income bracket, but they didn't really drill down to, for low income by age group, what those percentages are. 84% of US young adults use social media. Well, why does that matter to our project? We are providing SNAP education to improve physical activity, reduce physical inactivity, and promote healthy eating behaviors in Head Start preschoolers and their families. And so the parents that we are trying to send our message out to are often probably in that 18 all the way up to 45 or 50-year-old age group. So maybe 10 towards the younger side, but some a bit older. Next slide, please. So, there's a lot of efficacy for digital interventions. There have been some recent review studies that I've cited here that have shown that social media has potential, for example, to promote weight loss or weight maintenance, help with blood sugar control, improve dietary quality of viewers, improve physical activity. Although there have been some negative results from some of those trials, neutral, and there's a concern with some of the quality of the studies that have been done, with many of them not having control groups. Next slide, please. So one survey, in particular of SNAP-Ed classes in Illinois, showed that 92% of SNAP-Ed eligible adults just owned a smartphone, and 57% indicated they would use online nutrition information. In our particular target group, which is SNAP-Ed parents of preschoolers, one group actually used Sesame Street's Food for Thought via Facebook group, and they found that the parents enjoyed the content and were retained in the study. Of course, the problem with these types of studies is that they're often incentivized, meaning that when we're doing a controlled study, we recruit participants, we may get participants who agree to participate, who are already interested in cooperating, and then may get some incentives to fill out surveys or things like that. Real life can be harder. Next slide, please. So the other problem, of course, is engagement. I think some of y'all have shown some excellent results, and it's really hard. You know, I can't see someone else's dashboard, so I don't know their engagement. You know, the USDA MyPlate Instagram handle came out fairly recently, and they are already up to almost 6,000 followers. But even for myplate.gov, you'll notice that most of their posts have well below 100 likes. Cooking Matters National has about 3,000 followers, but their posts are about 10 to 15 likes. And then if you look at many of the local SnapEd accounts, for example, for Kentucky or FNEP, New York, Louisiana, Texas, some of the ones that we follow, they often have about 400 to under 1,000 followers and about 5 likes on average per post. Next slide, please. So this is an example from MyPlate. You can just see that this was fridge tips to stretch a budget, and it had just 41 likes when checked. Next slide, please. This is an example from Cooking Matters National. Again, you can see in both of these, the images are very professionally done. They have great quality, great color scheme, but they do have sort of a professional look to them. They don't necessarily look like they are authentically done by someone who's posting for themselves. Next slide, please. Here's one from SnapEd New York. You can see here that this one had 8 likes. And so as we go from bigger national to regional and smaller social media handles, especially on Instagram, you see less, at least open engagement as measured by likes. Next slide, please. So some of the things we've recognized as we've been talking about this, and it's usually my students and I that are working on this. We're pretty well a small social media team. We have usually a student from UNT also helping with the physical activity side. But we think we're noticing that there's kind of a reluctance to engage with SNAP accounts, food bank accounts, government accounts, or at least like them, even if they're engaging. There's also a lack of personalization of these accounts. The images are often very professionally done. They may adhere to best practices, but the photos don't necessarily look real, and there are often really limited numbers of reels, which are pretty popular. We wonder if participants maybe have some fear of stigma, maybe branded as poor if they engage with these sites or with these handles and this content. Next slide, please. So we started our Instagram account, and we also have Facebook groups with slightly different sort of goals. They're closed Facebook groups. We started Snap for HL, so for Head Start's Healthy Lifestyles, in March 2022. I started with a student who had some experience with social media, but she was pretty well generating all the posts, creating Canva. I later transitioned to a student who had a marketing degree, who was able to help us generate our logo and our social media guide and some templates and things like that. Our targeted behaviors are improving healthy eating behaviors, increasing physical activity among Head Start parents and their families. Next slide, please. So what we decided to base our actual Instagram and all our social media account in was on a health belief model. So you may know this evolved in the 1950s as sort of a response to try to help understand why people wouldn't participate in preventive screenings. And the idea is that when you're trying to get people to adopt behaviors, that they're belief that they actually are at risk of illness or a problem if they don't uptake the behavior, combined with their belief that they can be effective in taking on the action will predict the likelihood that they adopt the behavior. And some of the constructs that you're trying to influence with health belief model are influencing perceived benefits of taking an action, decreasing perceived barriers, improving self-efficacy, and providing cues to action. Next slide, please. So our account started last year. We made the choice to take Snap out of the name. Obviously, we still put Snap on all of our acknowledgement slides, but we named the handle Head Start to Healthy Lifestyles because we are a Head Start account. We started using Reels for the first time in early 2023. We started kind of taking pictures ourselves out where we are and trying to put those pictures into sort of our own data bank so that we could use them. And we're still working on this and getting more consistency of color scheme and font because it is, as I said, a cross collaboration between our university and UNT. We've also been collaborating with other organizations beginning in 2023, including the North Texas Community Market. And then we've been doing more strategic following and trying to include, share things more to stories and hashtags. Next slide, please. And so you can see this was our very first year, our very first slides, our posts. They're not super pretty. I think they have good content. They're an appropriate literacy level, but this was my first student who didn't have the marketing degree. Next slide, please. And then we have now. So we still only have 87 followers. We've constantly reaching out to our parents via flyer and sharing things on Seesaw, etc., to try to get them to follow our Instagram and join our Facebook group, but we're finding it really challenging. But you can see that we've gone up to one of our most popular reels, I think has over 300 likes. It's the one that's linked there, the Water Sorbet reel, which we released in the heat of the Texas summer and has lots of pretty red colors in it. And some of our other reels have been very popular as well. So we feel like our reels, if you can look at the dashboard there, get much more in reach and impressions than stories or our posts do. Next slide, please. So my final comment is that maybe we should consider not actually putting Snap in the handle, maybe have Snap other places, but I wonder if we decrease engagement for risk of bias, and hopefully that's okay to do. Maybe using more real photos, interacting with local accounts and really posting your location so people feel that they're engaging with something local, and then really consider how to connect with your audience and consider your voice. Some of the accounts that we notice do a great job and get really high following are things like Feeding Picky Eaters, Kids Eat in Color, and Mama Knows Nutrition. And those are all registered dietitians who are offering great advice for parents of young children, but it really has their voice in it and they relate to parents as other parents. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was great. Does anyone have any questions? We'll open it up. Feel free to put your questions for Kathleen in the Q&A. And for being a new implementing agency, you're doing a great job. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
We feel a little bit small and uncertain a lot of times, but we're working at it.
You're doing great. So
thank you. Well, if anybody wants slides or has questions or anything, feel free to reach out. But yeah, just sharing what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. And with that, if you have any other follow-up questions for Kathleen, feel free to put them in the Q&A. But that will conclude today's day one of conference. We have a question, Kathleen. She's
yes, ma'am. For PPTs?
Participants.
Okay, sorry. I'm not, that's not something I know.
No,
okay.
I thought it was PowerPoints earlier too. So
it's participants. Okay, gotcha. Through Instagram, we're trying to use more polls and things like that. We've not done it much yet. I still find that engagement with that is not so good. It's really our closed Facebook group where we're trying to create more engagement. And with our closed Facebook group, we've changed strategies. We're still resharing some of the content from Instagram to Facebook, but we're trying to take pictures when we're in the classrooms doing direct education and then ask a question like, ask your child about, which part of the broccoli plant you eat, or ask your child if they can show you the skeleton dance or whatever it is. So we're trying to do more of that. And then like, what's your favorite recipe in the closed Facebook group so that they can engage with each other versus the Instagram, which is more of a just public facing social marketing campaign.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And just so y'all know, Dawn did did put the conference evaluation in the chat. If you are not able to come to day 2, we ask that you go ahead and take the conference evaluation today. We want to thank all of the wonderful presenters that came today and presented to us. It was a lot of really great information, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow we have an action-packed day from 11 a.m. Eastern Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, again with another 30-minute break in between like we did today. It'll be a very similar structure, just different topic areas. And if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to us, but we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Again, if you cannot come tomorrow, please, please, please take the conference evaluation. It really helps us improve and make this virtual conference better for everybody in the future. So we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.